but not participate in this operation. Okay. The second question is, in the last few days, Sweden and Finland decided to join NATO. I know it's a sovereign country's decision, but does the Secretary General worry it could be an escalation, or at least to complicate the situation now in Europe?
Well, as you said, it is a sovereign decision made by member states. Our focus remains on trying to put an end to this conflict, and especially on trying to alleviate the humanitarian situation facing millions of Ukrainians. Majid, and then Madame.
Thank you, Stefan. I have two questions. First one on Iran. There are protests due to economic hardships inside Iran, and there are reports of crackdown by the government. Any reaction to that?
I haven't seen those reports, but let me look. But I mean, as a matter of course, as you know, we strongly believe that anyone should be able to demonstrate freely and peacefully.
My second question is on Iraq. The Iraqi oil authorities have accused the Kurdistan regional government of taking over certain oil field by military force. Some sees this as they're concerned of a use of military force by the Iraq against Kurdistan regional government. Does the Secretary General and UN has any reaction?
Let me check. I have not heard. Let me check with our colleagues at the mission in Baghdad. Celia.
Stephen, Mali, Paris and its European partner are supposed to leave at the end of August. 3 bases were supposed to remain in operation: Gossi, Menalka and Gao. It will not be the case, of course. So will their withdrawal have an impact on the MINUSMA?
Will the withdrawal of the French forces?
And the European.
Look, you know, we are dealing in Mali with a situation that is being dealt to us, right? It is clear that these things will have an impact. The work of the mission will adapt, but what has not changed is the mission's mandate. Yeah.
Yeah, one follow-up on Secretary General's statement on the Buffalo shooting. What is the UN's position on gun control in general for countries? What is the United Nations recommendation in terms of semi-automatic weapon in U.S. and other countries?
I would refer you to the UN Small Arms Treaty.
But the Secretary General doesn't have a position on that?
I would refer you to the UN's Small Arms Treaty on that.
Treaty?
The treaty.
Oh,
Small Arms Treaty, yeah.
But based on that, what is the UN's position on the use of semi-automatic weapon by civilians or have the right to purchase at the supermarkets?
Look, each country has its own laws and regulations. What we saw was a heinous act of violence fueled by racism and by hatred, clearly made worse by the weapons used. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks.
Celia.
Yes, let's go back to the special envoy to Libya. I heard that the African group has came up with one name of an African, and they sent it to the Secretary General. Do you know anything about it?
Questions, I mean, do I know anything about anything? There's been lots of, I mean, as you know, the issue on Libya and the naming of a special representative has been the focus, a lot of chatter, a lot of rumors, a lot of questions, not too many answers. When we are ready, there will be a name submitted, and that name will there'll have to be some agreement from the Security Council. But I have nothing to confirm at this point.
The Secretary General will be ready.
This is the object of a lot of discussions and phone calls and discussions and more phone calls. Yes, Madame.
Yeah, offhand, when does this truce end in Yemen? It was 2 months, right?
Yes, it was two months or 3. One would have to check offhand. I will get back to you because clearly I don't know offhand. But we hope it will last as long as possible for the sake of the Yemeni people. But it was agreed upon for 2 months, and we very much hope it will be a building block for a longer truce. Speaking of truce, Paulina, come on up.
Good afternoon. In preparation for the International Migration Review Forum, which starts later this week, the President of the General Assembly, Abdullah Shahid, this morning presided over an informal, interactive, multi-stakeholder hearing. President Shahid spoke at the opening alongside the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, Antonio Vitorino, who is also the coordinator of the UN Network on Migration, and alongside Ms. Maureen Gorial for the Major Group for Children and Youth. There are 2 thematic discussions as part of the hearing. The first one is on assessing the progress, gaps, and challenges in the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration. And the second one, commitments to advance the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration, including in advancing the recommendations of the report of the UN Secretary General. A civil society representative is going to present the outcome from, or the summary from today's hearing to the opening of the plenary of the IMRF, which will be held on Thursday. And President Shahid will again address participants this afternoon at the closing of the hearing. He will be joined by Robert Piper, the Assistant Secretary General for Development Coordination, and by Civil Society Representative Colin Raja from the Civil Society Action Committee. Within the hour, we will inaugurate the refurbished lactation rooms at the UN headquarters. This project is a joint collaboration between the President's Office, the Department of Operational Support, and the governments of El Salvador and New Zealand. President Shahid will be joined at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, which will take place at 1:15 in the visitors' lobby, by Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, the First Lady of El Salvador, Gabriela de Buckel, Ambassador Carolyn Schwelger, the Permanent Representative of New Zealand, who will speak on behalf of Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, and ASG Christian Francis Saunders, who will be speaking on behalf of the Department for Operational Support. And in his remarks today, President Shahid will also thank his Special Advisor on Gender Equality, Ambassador Daria Bavdaz-Kuret, and his entire gender team. The timing of today's inauguration event is tied with the International Day of Families, which was marked over the weekend. In that context, the lactation rooms are essential spaces and are therefore inclusive and accessible for nursing parents and their babies, adoptive parents, breastfeeding mothers, for mothers to express milk, and for fathers who want to bottle feed their babies. And you have the embargoed press release that was put out last week. In Dubai today is the World is One News Global Summit on the theme of Mission Peace. WION is an Indian English language news channel headquartered in New Delhi, and President Shahid is delivering keynote remarks to that global summit. In his remarks, President Shahid says that we face many challenges that are increasingly complex and interconnected, and he urges the international community to embrace the spirit of multilateralism enshrined in the UN Charter and come together as a global community. Turning to schedule for President Shahid in terms of who else he's meeting with today. This morning he met with the Prime Minister of Vietnam, Phan Minh Chinh. There's a readout available for that. He also has a meeting this afternoon with Ambassador Christian Wineswart, the Permanent Representative of Liechtenstein, and with the Coordination Committee of Special Procedures. And an update on the Hope Fellows. They have started their Geneva leg of the Europe study visit. They met today with Ambassador Thomas Greminger, who is the director of the Geneva Center for Security Policy, and with Ms. Flora Hayworth, the head of the Gender and Inclusive Security within that section. They welcomed the fellows and gave them an overview of what to expect for the week. And they also had a discussion with Ambassador Yannick Roulon, who is the host state ambassador of Switzerland. And the fellows also visited the Palais. So this leg of visit is organized and funded by the Swiss government. That is everything I have for you today. Any questions for me? Okay, let me check in the chat. There's actually nothing in the chat, which is surprising. If anyone has a question in the chat, please feel free. And if not, that's it. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
So we can start. Hello, everybody. First of all, I introduce myself. I'm Tommaso Della Longa, the president of spokesperson of the IFRC, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Thank you for joining us today. Ahead of the International Migration Review Forum, we wanted to brief you on our positions on migration, our calls on governments, highlighting how Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers are working to save lives on sea and land routes, and they are providing humanitarian services to migrants regardless of their legal status. Let me introduce our speaker today, the president of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent, Francesco Rocca, who is at the center. Then at the left, Tiziana Bonzon, the IFRC manager for climate, migration and resilience, who has been part of the negotiation leading up to the IMRF. And then Janelle Lai, who will tell us more about her experience as our spokesperson on the Ocean Viking vessel on search and rescue operation in the Mediterranean Sea. After their three opening statements, we'll take questions. So let's start with President Rocca. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Thank you very much to be with us today. When I was in Marrakesh in 2018 for the adoption of the Global Compact for Migration, I said in a statement that the world's approach to migration was painfully broken, but that Global Compact could fix it. The text signed by governments in Morocco provides an important reference point to consider how we are all working to better protect and assist migrants. And this International Migration Review Forum is the first time that we are coming together to assess our collective progress. After 4 years, we know progress has been made, but I'm sad to say that we still see migrants dying, facing abuse, struggling to access essential services, and we know that there is still a long road to realizing the vision and the commitments concretized in Marrakesh. Not enough changes to policies and practice to ensure safe and dignified migration have taken place, and many more lives have been lost due to that failure to act. The International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent networks presence in countries of origin, transit and destination, and our almost 15 million volunteers who are embedded in communities are at the front lines of providing humanitarian assistance and protection to migrants. Our daily work shows us that we need to work harder. Our daily work shows us that we need to work together if we are to make migration safer and more dignified. And while governments have the right to set migration policies and to manage their borders, they are obliged to do so in a way that prevents suffering and death, and governments have the responsibility to save lives. And beyond the lack of proactive steps to protect migrants, we have also seen the criminalization of humanitarian assistance and many other obstacles to accessing and providing assistance to people in need. Across the globe, many different factors compel people to move across international borders, and we need more timely and resolute efforts to make migration a choice, not a necessity. People leave their homes, their countries, and even their regions and embark in a long and dangerous journeys because of conflict, violence, and disasters. And many crises became protracted because political leaders are not able anymore to find political solutions while people are dying and suffering and leaving their own country to seek safety and protection. Yes, these are not the only factors that drive such movements. Poverty, marginalization, exclusion, limited access to essential services and livelihood also influence the search for safety and better opportunities in other countries. And we know that the adverse effects of climate change and environmental degradation will continue to threaten people's lives, heightening risks and vulnerabilities, and limiting the chances for adaptation. Just as an example, the Namibia Red Cross supported people displaced from Angola into Namibia due to drought with food, shelter, healthcare, and other essential services. And even as states and stakeholders must take timely and resolute action to mitigate climate change and reduce the factors that compel people to move, we must also recognize that in the face of several global challenges, people will continue to move across international borders. Too many people on the move, migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and other displaced people, take dangerous and arduous journeys traveling through inhospitable environment across land and sea in search of safety and better opportunities. And during their journeys, many people on the move face extraordinary risks to their lives, safety, and dignity. They die, go missing, face abuse, exploitation, and other protection risks. They also face barriers that constrain access to essential humanitarian assistance and protection, including food and water information, health services, and connection with their families. And across the world, over 48,000 people have died or disappeared since 2014, while traveling along sea-based migration route. And the deadliest route is via the central Mediterranean Sea, where at least 19,000 people have died since 2014. And many more deaths go unrecorded. Meanwhile, global estimates on deaths and other tragedies along land-based routes are unavailable. We cannot allow these tragedies to continue. We cannot sit idly as people face abuse, exploitation, and other harms and pay the ultimate price as they travel along migration routes. It is for this reason that in 2021 we established the first humanitarian service point at sea. We entered in partnership with the SOS Mediterranean to provide humanitarian services on the Ocean Viking ship, which conducts rescue operations along the central Mediterranean Sea. And in just 8 months, between September 2021 and April 2022, the vessels have conducted 20 rescue operations and rescued almost 1,260 people, including children and pregnant women. Our staff on board have provided essential humanitarian services such as first aid, food and relief items, psychosocial support, and other services. And this humanitarian service point at sea is part of a broader program we launched in 2021 to reduce vulnerabilities along both land and sea-based migration routes. We see the different risks, harm, and vulnerabilities people on the move face along their journeys. Across the globe, we are working to strengthen the humanitarian assistance and protection to vulnerable people on the move. Our humanitarian service points are safe and welcoming spaces that provide humanitarian assistance and protection to people on the move, irrespective of who they are, where they come from, and what they look like. We focus on needs and prioritize the most vulnerable. There is currently a total of 330 humanitarian service points in more than 45 countries to improve safety and dignities on migration routes. They provide shelter, food, water, sanitation, hygiene, and healthcare, including COVID-19 services, information, legal assistance, and protection to people on the move, regardless of their status and without fear of reprisal. And I would like to give you some example of our work. In the dry corridor between Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, the Honduran Red Cross used humanitarian service points to provide migrants with water, information, healthcare, and other services. The Colombian Red Cross implemented humanitarian service points at the border with Venezuela during the COVID-19 pandemic, offering essential services like healthcare. National societies in countries bordering in Ukraine and in Europe are using humanitarian service points to make sure that those seeking safety across borders receive information, healthcare, and other essential services that they need. Just as an example, the Romanian Red Cross is implementing humanitarian service points in Bucharest to support fleeing Ukrainians providing information, food, water, and hygiene items. The Hungarian Red Cross has been operating a humanitarian service point in Keleti railway station 24 hours and 7 days, welcoming people arriving from Ukraine by train. And volunteers have been offering information, hot drinks, hygiene items, and baby care products. And we are taking bold steps to save lives and reduce vulnerabilities during migration journeys. And we need states and other stakeholders to do the same. We have seen the COVID-19 pandemic heavily hit people's livelihoods, their sources of income, their health, their overall socio-economic well-being, undermining development gains and widening inequalities. Migrants and displaced persons have been disproportionately affected. Our last research showed that migrants face significant humanitarian consequences to discrimination, vulnerabilities, and barriers to essential services, and because of the measures taken to manage the health impacts of the pandemic. And National Red Cross and Red Crescent societies on the ground have worked relentlessly to address the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and ensure access to essential services for migrants and others in vulnerable situations. They provided relief, cash and translation, medical, psychosocial, and many other services. The Maldivian Red Crescent established a migrant support center that engaged migrant volunteers, issued migrants with beneficiary cards, and agreed with the local authority not to share information on immigration status. The Red Cross of Montenegro provided psychosocial and medical support to migrants, information about vaccination processes, and mediation and accompaniment service. These emblematic responses provide insights of how national societies of Red Cross Red Crescent across the globe are supporting the implementation of the Global Compact commitments, make sure that no one is left behind, even in the face of unprecedented global challenges. In conclusion, the IFRC has a long-standing commitment and experience in providing humanitarian assistance and protection to people in need. Our actions prioritize the more vulnerable, the most in need, regardless of the status, abiding by our fundamental principle. We identify where the greatest humanitarian needs lie and work tirelessly to address them. Very often, migrants and other displaced persons fall into this category. This is why migration is one of our 5 global strategic priorities. Yet we do not differentiate. We work with all those who have been impacted by migration, migrants, displaced persons, families staying behind, returnees, those who are unable to move out of harm's way, host communities. We have the moral imperative to help people in need. And the political, public, and humanitarian response to the Ukraine crisis has shown what is possible when humanity and dignity comes first, when there is a global solidarity and that will to assist and protect the most vulnerable, when host community embody the principle of inclusion and set trajectories for integration. This must be extended to everyone in need seeking protection wherever they come from. We hope that the Ukrainian crisis would have been a turning point in the European migration policies, but unfortunately this was not the case. The EU has still different approaches to migration at the eastern border and at the southern one. But ethnicity and nationality should not be a deciding factor in saving life. Together, we must work resolutely to ensure the safety, dignity, and well-being of the most vulnerable and the most marginalized. This event in the coming days is an important moment to set the stage for what will we achieve over the next 4 years. And we are calling on governments for individual and collective efforts on saving life at sea, at land, ensuring access to essential services for migrants regardless of status, scaling up support to people at risk of climate displacement, and the inclusion of migrants in all aspects of society, including decision-making and processes around the Global Compact of Migration. And finally, we want to highlight again that saving life is not only a humanitarian and moral imperative, but is a responsibility of governments. As I said in several occasions, no one is questioning when the firefighters are running because a building is on fire and they ask the documents to those who are saving in this building on fire. Why we must be criminalized if we work to save lives in the Mediterranean Sea? Someone one day will explain me which is the difference in saving life and preventing people to die in the Mediterranean Sea from those who are running to save lives because a building is on fire, or an ambulance that is running to save life because in a family there is an heart attack. This is what we are trying to do in the Mediterranean Sea, and I'm very proud of these activities. We discussed, because in this moment it seems that if you go to save life in the Mediterranean Sea, you are taking a political side. This is where we are now in Europe as humanitarians, and it's very difficult for us, but at the same time we are very proud of our action in the Mediterranean, saving lives every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Rocca. And now, Tiziana, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tommaso. Just wanted to share with you some insights from our contribution to the progress declaration that will come out of the IMRF. We've seen this as a very important moment. We, as the Red Cross and Red Crescent, were part of the consultations and negotiations of the Global Compact in 2017 and 2018. And of course, there are specific objectives that are close to our mandate as humanitarians, talking about saving lives and increasing search and rescue operations, or talking about access to essential services, ensuring that migrants are part of all the decisions that concern their lives, as they're fully included in these processes, and looking as well as some of the drivers that are a multiplying threat, I would say, like climate change, that is really becoming a phenomenon that contributes, of course, to displacement in many contexts, and ensuring that in the Progress Declaration there is a recognition of the fact that people are now impacted by compounded crises that have an impact on human mobility. We were very much in discussions, not only here in New York, but also leveraged our national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies back in the capitals to allow them to have these conversations with their own representatives in the authorities, ensuring that the same messages are constantly and consistently repeated in all the different contexts. So we are of course very happy to be part of this event during this week. Continue to reinforce the specific objectives of the Global Compact that have a humanitarian focus, and stressing the importance of saving lives, acknowledging that we are a credible voice among the many voices that you will be hearing during the week. The Red Cross and Red Crescent can certainly claim to be the organization that is truly present along all the migratory routes in countries of origin, countries of transit, and countries of destination. We can be an important partner and implementer to working in close collaboration with local authorities to ensure that all migrants are treated with dignity and the migration journeys are safer. So we really count on leveraging this presence, ensuring that the specific concerns that we have raised that will be taken into account and reflected in the Progress Declaration, which we believe seems to be the case, at least looking at the last version of the document. And we hope that these elements will be reflected and these commitments implemented in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiziana. Janelle, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tommaso. So the Central Mediterranean is one of the deadliest migration routes in the world. Last year, more than 2,000 people lost their lives or disappeared attempting the journey to safety. This past autumn, I spent 5 weeks aboard the Ocean Viking, the rescue ship in the Mediterranean Sea, run by SOS Méditerranée and the IFRC, and I was part of a Red Cross crisis response team. I've been on a lot of Red Cross missions around the world, and this was by far the toughest, just physically, mentally, spatially. We saw a potential mass casualty situation unfolding in front of our eyes every single day we were in the search and rescue zone. And really, search and rescue, it starts with a dot on the horizon. And as we get closer, we see rafts, some of them dipping into the sea. Others are rickety boats you wouldn't want to take on a local lake. And the actual rescue operation, it can take hours. It's a very delicate operation, and honestly, I get a pit in my stomach remembering the rescues and just the fear that are in people's eyes. But once they come on board our rescue ship, they all have different reactions. Some are just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Others collapse because they've been weak from the journey. And others are nervous. They weren't sure for a moment whether they were being arrested or whether they were being rescued. And many of them, when they saw the Red Cross and Red Crescent emblem, they knew they were safe because it's an emblem they've seen in their countries and around the world. Once people are on board, we're able to offer showers really quickly to people who smell like gas fumes because fuel burns are so common. And then everyone gets things like dry clothes, food, water, and medical care. And the medical care is some of the first that people have had in years. So there are some really serious ailments, and some people just want something looked at that's been a chronic condition that they've been dealing with. We spent more than a week on board asking for a port of safety from nearby countries, and at a certain point we were going to run out of baby formula in 3 days. While on board, I had a lot of time to talk with people who were trying to make this journey, and there were a couple of things that struck me. First of all, there were a lot of kids and minors traveling alone. So during my time on board, there were more than 50 people who were under the age of 18 who'd been traveling, making this journey. And one was a 10-year-old kid from Nigeria, and he was separated from his brother. And he didn't even know how he got separated from his brother. And I think this is something really common. People often ask me, like, how did that happen? How did a 10-year-old kid get on board by himself? And the thing is, he doesn't even know. There's just a lot of chaos very often, and families get separated during migration journeys. Another thing that struck me is that it's one thing to hear about torture in Libya, but it's another thing to see the evidence. I was really shocked at how many people wanted to show me their wounds. I think people just really wanted their story to be told, and they wanted to show that this is happening around the world. I met one man from Ghana, and he went to Libya for a job. Instead, he ended up in a forced labor situation, and he just said he still has both these scars and also some trouble breathing, and he was so glad that he was going to safety, but he was just worried about what the long-term effects would be on his body alone. Another thing that struck me is just family separation, like I mentioned. I met a 20-year-old car mechanic from Syria. He was traveling with his mother and his little sister, and he was so grateful that they were safe, but they still had another brother and his father back in Syria, and they just weren't sure when they'd be able to get them to safety, and they said they just won't be able to rest. They're basically haunted until they can figure out a way to get them to safety. And lastly, a lot of people just told me that they're the lucky ones. These migration journeys all over the world are so incredibly difficult. In the Sahara Desert, for example, many migrants perish, and there aren't even great estimates for how many, but it's a really dangerous journey with starvation, dehydration, sexual assault, and violence. And it's practically a miracle that a lot of these people made it to the coast and then were able to be rescued. A lot of them are still on their journey and they don't know their end point, but it's certainly something people will be dealing with for a long time. So in closing, I just think it's important to bring these types of stories to the IMRF. One of the priorities of the Global Compact for Migration should be to save lives, and that's exactly what we're doing, but we can't do it alone. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Janelle. So now it's time for questions. Of course, we are also, we know that some of you could be also interested in what our volunteers are doing inside and outside Ukraine. So President Roca is also available to answer to questions about the Ukrainian crisis. So first, Valeria, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this briefing on behalf of ANCA. Mr. President, my question is on Ukraine. I was wondering if you, as a Red Cross, are cooperating in an independent investigation into what happened in Busha. Thank you so much.
No, we are not involved. I don't know if the colleagues of the ICRC are involved on this. I will speak to tomorrow. I will have a meeting as we have regularly with Peter Maurer, the president of the ICRC. But so far, Ukrainian Red Cross and, of course, International Federation are not involved in this investigation.
Thank you very much, Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. The Global Compact left a lot of leeway to international states, every country. have you actually seen any dramatic change in how countries, for instance, in the Mediterranean and Africa, whatever, are dealing with the migration issue since the compact was adopted?
Thank you for the question. No, what I've seen, of course, first that the Global Compact, for those who signed it, has not implemented enough. But the only meaningful change that I've seen is the one that I mentioned, but is a positive one. So still in Europe there is a big heart and soul, because the community in Europe were able to open the arms, receiving millions in few days of Ukrainian. So the lie about the threat that is coming from the Mediterranean Sea, when it comes about few thousands of people, so that has an answer in what we were able to do at community level. So this is the only evidence that I can give you back, but not in the other sense that you meant during the question. Of course, I didn't see. Our concern is about the next future, because we cannot deny that even the Ukrainian crisis, and that's been discussed and talked enough about the impact that the block of the ports and the agriculture in Ukraine will have on the most vulnerable countries, that they are depending by the 50 up to 80% on these. It will be something that will affect once again and will put at the center of the discussion, I'm sure, in few months, once again in Europe and in other Western countries, the issue of migration.
So as a follow-up, what you're actually saying is that there is discrimination against migrants coming from Africa, the Middle East, and elsewhere in comparison to basically white Ukrainians.
Those who are fleeing violence, those who are seeking protection should be treated equally. I don't think that there is any difference from anyone fleeing Donbass or someone fleeing the violence of the radical group Boko Haram in Nigeria. See if someone is able to explain me which are the difference from when it comes about violence and sufferances, I think that we have the answer. Yes, there is a double standard. This is evident, this is in our eyes, and we cannot deny it when it comes about seeking protection.
Please go ahead.
And even and someone will tell me, answering to our very obvious question like this, that I'm making political statements. So this is the moment of which we as humanitarians are living in.
Thank you very much for the briefing. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. I'm curious to know what your view is of the importance of the port of Odessa. G7 has asked for it to open up. What does it mean for your work actually in Ukraine? Thank you.
The port?
Odessa.
Odessa. Okay, sorry. I don't want to be manipulated on this, of course, not from your side. Not from your side, I mean, it's evident that it's vital, but it's vital the grain, not the port of Odessa. It's vital the flour, is not about the port of Odessa, because this is not, I don't want to be perceived, and again, not from you, but by anyone that I'm inciting to do something to open the port or not. I'm inciting everyone to find a peaceful solution that allow the people who's waiting flour and cereals and grain from Ukraine to receive it. This is the moral responsibility that lie on the international community, and it's vital to find an answer. So this is the way, because in the recent days I've seen an increasing and mounting discussion about a military operation about this. I want to be part of it. We are seeking for peaceful solution that allow a peaceful transfer of cereals, grain to those in need, to those are waiting, as I said, 50 or 70%. And,
no, I appreciate it. I wasn't asking a political question.
yeah, but
maybe everything's political. But I was just asking,
you are
how
fully
much
right.
do you need?
I apologize if I answer because in this moment we are so under big pressure because every phrase, every statement that makes is look what has happened with when Peter Maurer did his visit in Russia, and he did good and he did the right things. But everything that is coming, even from us as the Red Cross, Red Crescent, they should be neutral, is at risk to be bad perceived. So we want to be clear. This is why I make this preamble that maybe it is useless because we know each other and I know how serious you are, but it's not about you. But then once my statement is reporting, I want to add this, so that we are seeking for peaceful solution for the grain coming from that delicate area, which is vital for millions and the life of millions.
Well, maybe I can ask it a different way. How much grain is not getting in that you would use because the port is closed? I'm just trying to get a sense of how much you use it.
Look, we did. I'm not able to give the percentage about how much is used by the Red Cross, Red Crescent network. I can give you the sense of the total amount, which in some country can reach the 80% of the, and we are talking also in a very delicate moment because the Horn of Africa is hit once again by one of the worst drought ever seen in that area in the recent decades, not years. So this is something badly needed. And we hope for a solution about it, because if not, this will add tension, pressure, and movement of population even in that area, and no one can survive without the basic. So this is my thought. It's a very delicate moment. So this is why we are insisting on finding solution on this crisis, because we are. Please. Thank you.
Hi, this is Edward from China Central Television. I'm going to move the question from Ukraine to Syria. Just now we're talking about the migration on the Mediterranean Sea, but we know a large chunk of Syrian refugees, they're actually living now in the neighboring countries like Turkey, Lebanon, and etc. But you know, a couple of weeks ago, Lebanon just told the UN High Commissioner of Refugees that they cannot bear to take any more refugees. We know we respect the free movement. We respect their way to seek for a better life in neighboring countries. But how to let me put the question this way: how to help those hosting countries to really have those capacity to have the refugees? Because obviously they said they cannot take cannot take any more, because it's like 35% of the population in Lebanon has already been refugees. Thank you.
Yes, and this is I think Lebanon has shown during the years a great capacity of solidarity. So we are really grateful to the Lebanese community, because really with the Palestinians and then the Syrians, they really living with a burden on their shoulders, but also they were able to share. And of course, once again, it's up to the international community, it's up to this building to find solution and negotiate how we can support the Lebanese authority in this very difficult financial moment for them. So in time of crisis, we should unite and support the government of Lebanon and the Lebanese authorities, because they cannot face it alone. This is obvious. We are talking about the life of millions living in Lebanon, and the financial situation is very heavy in this moment at the country. So I think it's a common responsibility to support the Lebanese government. This is the only answer that I can give you. There are not technical answers. This is a political answer that must be found in the right places.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm Dulcie Leinbach from PES Blue. How closely are you tracking the UK's new policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda? The new policy. Are you tracking that process at all, and what do you see? Thanks.
British Red Cross is working hard on it. The colleagues of the British Red Cross are working hard. Of course, we are really concerned about it. We are concerned that other countries can follow the example, because there are some other countries in Europe are opening the discussion. I think this is not the right answer. We were very clear even in other parts of the world when this happened in the past, and is still happening. So we are really concerned, and we are very vocal on this, asking to avoid this measure that is really adding pain on the life of those that will be expatriated to Rwanda to wait to be processed. So we are talking about an important country that can do more and can process those who have the right to be protected, and not in a very right framework. Because we are not talking about if I compare the numbers that are arriving on a daily basis in Italy or in another European countries, we cannot compare with those who are arriving by the channel on a daily basis and a regular basis in UK. So we are talking about few hundreds people, and that can be processed in a very transparent, without adding transparent form, without adding sufferances to the people.
But have people started to be expatriated to Rwanda? Have you seen that happen yet?
No, we don't have any. I don't have any info at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Roca. My name is Alan Bulkati. I'm a correspondent of news agency RIA Novosti. Russian Federation was asking ICRC members to visit Russian prisoners of war in Ukraine. I don't know if you were able to answer this question, but is the ICRC or maybe your federation preparing such a visit, and when it might occur? Thank you.
ICRC and IFRC has a two completely different mandate. I'm in daily touch with the Russian Red Cross and the Ukrainian Red Cross, both of them, because it's my responsibility to support them, to listen about their needs, and provide concrete answers to their needs, so that they can protect their ability to respond to every crisis in every moment. This is in Russia, in Ukraine, and everywhere in the world. We are 192 national society, so this is the duty of the federation. So in the case of the places that you are mentioning, this is the ICRC role, is not my role, and we don't duplicate our efforts. So it's not me the one that has to answer to this question.
So is there any other question from the room, or I check the chat? I don't see any other question also from the chat. So thank you very much for your attention. And let's hope that this week will be fruitful for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.